Well, hello, everyone. It is 11:30, and we're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Jackie Johnson, and I am the Director of Financial Wellness and Outreach here at Alabama One Credit Union. We want to welcome everyone as they're coming in. This is an exciting time for us because today we are going to be talking to a couple of generations that are new but are so important. And so we welcome you all to GenTALK, our virtual lunch. And today our overall theme is the Gen Z, the new corporate asset. And so I just wanted to kind of take a minute. I know people are still coming in, but just remind you all to make sure that you mute your phones. Make sure that if you have any questions or comments, please use the chat. We welcome any questions that you may have or comments. We have a great group of speakers lined up today. And so we're going to go ahead and get started. But I want to kind of give you some background on GenTALK. GenTALK actually kind of formed from what we have been doing here at Alabama One for the last 2.5 years from our Bridge Builders conferences and our Bridge Builders luncheons that we do. And our first Bridge Builders conference back in 2019, we had a young lady stand up and say, "Hey, I'm the youngest person at this conference. What are you guys going to do or say for us?" And so Tanaya, it all stemmed from you. And if you're on here, we appreciate you. And so from that time, we've really been trying to put together something where we can speak to the millennials and to the Gen Zers. And so we are finally here today, July 15th, to do that. Want to just say a special thanks to our team here at Alabama One, which was headed up by Precious Houston and a couple of other names, Marissa and David and all those folks. We appreciate you guys. So without further ado, I just want to make some introductions in our room and let you know what we're going to be doing for the next hour, hour and a half. To my left is Jason Halpern. Jason is going to be our moderator, kind of facilitator today. And Jason is our Chief Lending Officer here. He's on our leadership team at Alabama One, does awesome things. We love Jason. And we really picked him because we figured he could kind of bring fun to this and relate to those that are on the call. And so no heavy shoes to wear, Jason. And then over to my right, I know a lot of you, if you've been on our Bridge Builder Luncheon, is Martin Houston. And Martin Houston is our Senior Director of our growth team. And he and I are just going to kind of hang back today. We don't have to work too hard. We're going to let Jason take it from here. But again, please feel free, use the chat, engage, ask questions. I'm telling you, these three speakers that we have today are amazing. So Jason, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Jackie. What I just heard my role is basically to introduce the speakers and then get out of the way. So thank you guys for being here. We've got three awesome speakers today. We've got Mr. Rodney Pelt, and he will be speaking first. And sir, from watching you dance a little bit earlier, I am very excited to hear you talk. We've got Miss Jasmine Philyaw and Mr. Andy Phillips, who I've met. So first is going to be Mr. Rodney Pelt. Rodney T. Pelt Sr. is the founder and CEO of Mind Changers, which is a local nonprofit here. He is a decorated combat veteran with 16 years of service. So, sir, thank you very much for your service. Community mentor that partnered with a lot of organizations and was mentoring in local schools. And that's what made him come up with the great idea of Mind Changers. So, Mr. Pelt, we are excited to hear you. I understand you're going to be talking about how us old folks can learn to communicate with the younger generation. So I hope to learn a couple of things from you, and take it away, sir.
Yeah, okay. Thank you today for inviting me on. Thank you all for thinking of me and giving me the opportunity to share a little bit of what I've learned over the last 10, 12 years working with youth and young adults in our vicinity that we work in West Alabama and across the Black Belt. I think I'm overdressed a little bit today, but we're gonna make it work. Well, today, with the little time that I have, we're gonna talk about the top 5 barriers of communication when it comes to Gen Z. But before we get into that, we have to realize who who are the Gen Z? Who are we communicating with? Gen Zs are people that was born between 1995 and 2012 that grew up on video games and Red Bull. So we have to recognize who we're working with, who we're talking to. They're real techie, they're entrepreneurial, they're diverse, but they're a little less religious, and they're more liberal and progressive in their thinking. So we have to put all those things in a factor when we go to learn how to communicate with them. But let's talk about some five barriers to communication that kind of stop them from reaching their full potential, maybe in the workplace or in the social environments and stuff, some barriers that they have. Number 5, I should have had a PowerPoint, but Annie don't have one, so I feel better now too. Because Jasmine just gonna show us up with her presentation, but that's all right. I'm glad I went first. I can get out of the way. Lack of trust. Lack of trust is number 5 barrier. Lack of trust. When there is no trust, there's no effective communication. When employees don't feel that they trust their employers or the leaders or managers, communication suffers. So Gen Z has, in my dealings, has the almost the entitlement type of syndrome. So they feel like that it's theirs, it's mine. I gotta, you're supposed to give it to me. So if you break that trust barrier when it comes to that entitlement mindset, they can go left in communication breakdown. So we have to be aware of the lack of trust. We have to build back those trust factors. We have to make sure we talk to our Gen Z and build that relationship with them when it comes to building trust. Number 4, wrong channels or technology of communication. There are some ways to communicate. There are many ways to communicate today. Text, emails, snail mail, social media, even emojis, but rarely in-person contact. So when we're communicating with, when they're communicating with us, that's a barrier, because as all of us that's on this call know that a text message can be meant one way and taken a whole different separate way. Or an emoji can be meant sent one way and can be taken a whole another way. So we have to learn to make sure that when they communicate with us, we have to understand what they're trying to communicate and not be so quick to write it off and so quick to react negatively, because the way they communicate with social media, text message, emojis, different things like that might be something we're not used to. I'm still getting used to my son. I asked him something, he sent me the thumbs up. Okay, what that mean? Are you telling me okay? Are you telling me all right, whatever, Dad? Or what does that mean? So those are one communication barriers when it comes to Gen Z, wrong channels of communication or technology. Cultural differences. Communication and interaction from different cultures can come off in different ways. I know in northern America, just say New York, they communicate way different than we communicate in the South. So if you got a student or a young adult or something that's working with you that's from New York, they might be a little bit more aggressive in their communication, but that's just the way they grew up. So that can be taken wrong and it can put barriers of communication. So we have to understand where people come from, their background, their cultural diversity, all those different things when it comes to communication. And that can be a barrier when it comes to Generation Z. We got to find common ground when it comes to those cultural differences. Number 2, emotional state can be a barrier. When people are under so much pressure because of personal or work-related issues, they opt not to be so receptive to messages, communication from other employees or employers. So those can be barriers. We know that Generation Z got a lot going on in their lives. They got businesses, they got different things they're doing, and social media is big time in their lives and things like that. That can be a barrier because they can post something on social media. Let's use it for an example. Post something on social media, somebody comment, and they go way left with it. Their emotional state changes because of the interaction they have on social media, or they're feeling the pressure from work, and their emotional state might change from day to day, hour to hour, minute to minute, second to second. So those can be emotional barriers that Generation Z deals with. So we had to be mindful of that. And also the last one, communication barriers in Generation Z, from my perspective, can be distractions, outside distraction, other priorities. Like I said earlier, Generation Z is very entrepreneurial. So they might have a whole multitude of things they're doing outside of the workplace. They got, like my granddad said, you got a whole lot of irons in the fire and ain't nothing getting hot. So they might have a second job, different business they're trying to own and start, family, educational opportunities, even relationship stuff. So those distractions can be barriers when it comes to communicating within a workplace or a social environment. So we had to be mindful of what people deal with on a day-to-day basis when it comes to those things. So those are my top 5 barriers: distractions, emotional states, cultural differences, the lack of trust, and using the wrong channels when it comes to communication. Now, I'm gonna give you, and I know I'm talking real fast, so I'm gonna give you a couple of ways that we can combat these different barriers when it comes to Generation Z. First way is we can create a safe space to communicate. We can create spaces where we have means to say, hey, this is open, no judgment zone. Let's talk it out, chat and choose sessions, create those spaces where Generation Z can feel comfortable enough to communicate and not be judged or not be ridiculed by maybe the way they talk, the way they act, their interaction, different things like that. So we have to create those safe spaces. Be open-minded and optimistic. We have to, like I'm an old school soul. I'm 48, but I was raised around my great-grandmother, my great-granddad, and my granddad. So I got an old soul. So a lot of stuff Gen Z do, it just right over my head. I ain't trying to hear it. I don't want to pay attention to that. Move on to somewhere else. But we have to be optimistic about their ideals and their communication skills, and be open-minded to listen to and be receptive to what they're trying to say and what they're saying. And lastly, we have to listen. I don't know what I am, Generation X, I guess. We have to listen. We can't be so much dismissive. We can't be so much of I don't want to hear that, or just get over it, or pull yourself up by your own bootstraps, or stop talking about that, whatever. We have to sit and listen. We have to pay attention, because everybody's emotions, everybody's communication skills are different. People deal with different issues in different ways. So we have to be able to listen, communicate effectively, be open-minded, create safe spaces, and be optimistic about our Gen Z and their communication skills. Also, I want to say, why is Gen Z so important? Because they're our future. They're the ones that are going to be the doctors and the lawyers of tomorrow, the business owners, branch managers, the bankers, the lawyers, the garbage men, the people that work at AT&T, the water meter readers. They're going to be the ones that's going to carry our generation to the next phase of our lives. I say I'm in the second quarter of my life right now. I got 2 more quarters to go. So Gen Z is going to have to take me into that 3rd and 4th quarter. They're going to be the ones that take us to the next level as a race. I can say that. So we have to, I want to say this right, because I don't know how many people watching. We have to be mindful of them and appreciate them for what they bring to the table, because they are important. They are our future. They are our foundation going forward, because everything they do from today on affects not only our future, but affects the future of them, their kids, and their kids' kids, and further on. So we have to be optimistic. We have to listen to them. That's why they're so important. And different situations, I can talk about different situations that made me a better mentor, a better father. Like I said, I'm an old school soul. And one time my son Rodney Jr. is a little autistic, and he has Asperger's, and he's kind of, he's working with that. He's done great for himself now. But younger in life, I was so much old school, like, stop crying, pull yourself together. You ain't depressed, you ain't this, you ain't that, you ain't this, you ain't that. Tighten up, son. You can be a man. But it wasn't until later in his life that I had to learn, that I had to listen to him in order for him to grow into the potential that he is. And it took some years for me to get to that point. But now I realize that by sitting and listening to him when he turned 18, 19, 20, prepared him for now, for where he is now. And he's doing some great things, got 2 jobs, got a car, got his own bank account, making his own money. He ain't in my pocket. So he's doing real great. But I had to learn to listen and to pay attention to him and what he was going through. So not only I can be a better mentor, father, parent, leader, but he can also grow into his full potential. So yes, that situation made me a better person. So I don't know if I talk too fast and I eat up all my 15 minutes, but that's what I got for you today, guys. Let's learn to pay attention to our Gen Z, appreciate them for everything they bring to the table. Let's be able to listen, create safe spaces, be open-minded and optimistic, and we can break down those barriers of communication with our generation and the generations going forward.
Mr. Pelt, thank you very much. That was some great information. I know for me, I've got 3 teenage boys living in my house, and I coach a basketball team that has 10 of them, a very diverse group of kids. So you hit on a lot of good stuff. A question I have for you while we're getting to some other questions personally is the first comment you made, I think, is critical about building trust with Gen Zers. Is there anything specific in your experience that you've done to help establish that trust?
I got into the mode of not only listening to them, but not to be so judgmental, because we can judge a Gen Z or a young person and it turns them off. By, I'll give you an example. I would say just because if your pants are hanging down and you don't have a belt on, you got to be this, you got to be a gangster, you got to be a little thug boy, whatever. But I had to learn that he might just not have a belt. He might not be able to buy the right size pants or something like that. So when I started listening and then talking and understanding them and giving them an opportunity to talk to me, that builds that trust, that builds those relationships going forward. And not only made me better, but made them better also.
That's great. Thank you. Another question we have is, do you think the emotional state is due to the lack of personal interaction? Do you think that the Gen Zs in general, if they're a little more emotional, it's because of the phones, the cell phones, and all the social media, lack of personal interaction?
Oh, most definitely, most definitely. Our children, our young folk, Generation Z, are living for the comments. It's all about social media now. It's all about whatever I post, who's going to comment, who's going to say what, and it changes their perception of life. They don't, some of them, not all of them, but they don't live in right now reality. They live in the comments and likes, and that creates bad communication, because they rather communicate here than sitting and talking to somebody in front of them. Because even I found when students write papers or we do essays or something like that, teach them how to do an application. The shortcuts on a text, like your instead of Y-O-U-R, they put U-R or something. They put that on the application. So that technology is a huge barrier, not only to their educational growing into their minds, but also the interaction socially. A lot of kids cannot interact socially face-to-face because of technology on their phone. They can be one person on the phone and be a totally different person in real life. So that's a huge barrier. And we as parents, if any parents watching, we have to limit our kids on social media, our technology interaction. We really have to limit that to so many hours a day or so much time a week or whatever, because this can literally take over their lives.
Couldn't agree more. So kind of a follow-up to that, someone else had in here is, how do we give advice as parents, as mentors? How do we give advice without this generation, that generation receiving it as judgmental?
Just listen. Give an example of what you went through. Not so much of when I was young, I shelled peas all day. When I was young, I worked in the garden. You should be able to do that too. Just say, hey, when I was young, I had to do a little bit more for what I earned or what I wanted. How do you feel about that? And be able to listen to them. And that's not being judgmental. And when they tell you what they do, I mean, how they feel about it, well, say, and give them, I always tell the kids when I go to the detention centers, I said, think about, before you make that choice, think about the consequences that come with that choice. So we can tell our kids and our young adults and our Gen Zs about the consequences of what they're going through if they make those decisions. So that won't be so judgmental. And just know that if you do it right, they will, they won't part from it.
Thank you.
Good.
Yeah, that's
Awesome.
great. That's great.
Awesome.
Do we have any more questions in the chat? Okay. Well, thank you, sir. We appreciate it. And we will, if you can stick around, we're going to have our next couple of speakers, and then we'll see if there's any additional questions.
Gotcha. I'm here.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
All right. So our next speaker is Miss Jasmine Philyaw. Jasmine is a native of Evergreen, Alabama. She has obtained multiple degrees from Troy University, and she currently serves as a career coach at Coastal Alabama Community College. When Jasmine's not working or pouring into the community, she's hiking, spending time with her friends and family. And this is my question, Jasmine, curling up on the couch with your fur baby. As an old man, like I've said a couple of times, what's a fur baby?
My Chorky, Jackson Christopher Philyaw.
Christopher.
Right.
My mom graced him with that name. So
That's awesome. Well, Jasmine, as Rodney was trying to teach us old folks a couple of things about how to communicate with the younger generation, I understand you're going to actually give the opposite perspective. So again, we're excited to have you here. We appreciate you being here, and look forward to hearing what you have to say.
thank you so very much. Mr. Pelt, you did an amazing job. I loved how you answered those questions. I hope I answered whatever questions are geared towards me as efficiently as you. Again, everyone, my name is Jasmine Philyaw. I serve as a career coach. And one of the great things about my role is I assist counselors with creating and developing different ideas for career fairs, college fairs, and so forth. I've been working in the higher education space for going on 6 years. So I understand what employers are looking for, along with instructors and just in general, the staff at my institution of what they see within Gen Z. So today I am going to be discussing how Gen Z and millennials can increase their value in the workforce and in higher education.
Very good.
Okay, so first and foremost, a lot of times people will, or just older generations tend to kind of put us together, but there are vast similarities, but there are vast differences. So we're going to go through what, constitutes you as being a Generation Z or a millennial. So who are Generation Z? So 1997 to 2015, but 2015 is a debatable year. I just want to start off by saying a lot of this research I received from the Pew Research Center, which they're pretty accurate and pretty spot on with things. But again, the 2015, that end year is debatable. Alpha generation is starting to emerge. So they're trying to figure out where Gen Z will technically end. But something that I failed to put on this PowerPoint was one of the shaping events with Generation Z is the pandemic. So they're shaped by the pandemic. They're shaped by social media, smartphones. So of course, technology plays a role in that. I will say with social media, Mr. Pelt was pretty spot on when he was discussing just in general how Gen Zers view social media, because it was one of the shaping events within their life. And with smartphones, they didn't have the struggle of dial up? Does anybody remember dial up? Dial up, or listen, or what about the Razor or the flip phones or they straight up got the iPhone and the Androids. So that is, a shaping event, along with financial struggles of parents. And they are also viewing the massive amount of debt that millennials are in, which will be in the next slide. But Generation Z is going to be the most diverse and ethnical generation. So we're going to see, different ethnic groups. It's definitely going to be a rise in that. And of course, being that they're shaped by social media, technology, and so forth, they are known as the digital natives. And Generation Z is on track to being the most educated generation. So as Mr. Pelt said, this generation is our future. So who are millennials? Me. 1980 to 1996. So at this moment, millennials are the most educated group. And millennials, we were shaped by the Great Recession, technological advancements of social media. So we were around from MySpace, LimeWire, Facebook. So yes, along with internet. So we definitely understood dial-up and 9/11. So that was a huge shaping event within our generation. And millennials are officially claimed as America's largest generation. So according to Statistica.com, in 2020, it was recorded as millennials making up 1.8 billion. So 1.8 billion people identified and belong to the millennial generation. And millennials at this point, we are powering the workforce. However, we do have massive amount of student debt. And that was on more than one article. And by the way, towards the end of the presentation, I'm going to give you all my sources as well. So just in case you want to kind of go back, if you want an article, if you want to look at some things, that's pretty much where I garnered most of my information. So what does Generation Z value from the work environment and higher education? So this generation is more likely to pursue higher education, but there's a twist to that. According to the Harvard Business Review, Generation Z, they're finding more faster and inexpensive alternatives to education. Why? Because they're more conservative towards money. That's one. Two, they're more realistic, because one of the shaping events was the financial struggles of parents and seeing millennials within that massive amount of student debt. And it's so great. And hopefully one of the takeaways throughout this presentation is that you see that although we have vast differences, we do have quite a few similarities. Some things do repeat itself, as the famous quote, history repeats itself. So along with more conservative towards money and more realistic, Generation Z will take a pay cut for a job that they love. So if this job is giving them what they need creatively, passion-wise, they will take a pay cut. And Gen Zs want the following in the work environment. They want a great boss. They want stability and flexibility. I mean, they've seen throughout COVID that it really can just be an email as opposed to a meeting. So they see that and they want that. They also want a more diverse and inclusive work environment, because we have to remember that Gen Z is technically on track for being the most ethnic generation, as well as the most diverse generation. So let's dig a little bit deeper into what millennials feel about the work environment and higher education. So millennials are more idealistic and creative, okay? So this generation, me, more focused on the experience as opposed to the financial aspect. So less pragmatic than Generation Z, a little less conservative when it comes to money, finance. We value occupations and careers that incorporate visions and morals. So it makes sense that millennials will take a pay cut for a job that they love. If the job that they are currently working is not feeding them creatively, they'll leave. Which is something that employers, which I'll definitely discuss a little later on, are saying. It's pretty hard to retain your millennials and your Gen Zs now. This generation values education. And according to the Pew Research Center, 63% of millennials not only value college education, but plan to get a degree. And going off of Generation X with all the shaping events with the civil rights movement and so forth, education was looked and viewed at more so as not as escape GOAT, but the only way. So millennials are the byproduct of that. So emphasis definitely is placed on higher education. So what do millennials want in the workforce? Work and life balance. So they want a balance of, I want to, work 8 to 5 or however long entrepreneurship wise, and then go enjoy my family and my friends. They yearn for that. Moving up the ladder faster. So they want more middle level positions to get them to where they would like to be. Flexibility, stability, and a compromise of older generations. When doing my research, particularly within the Forbes article titled "What Millennials Value in the Work Environment," they want a certain amount of respect from older generations when it comes to, definitely thinking about, and incorporating their ways, their morals, their values, their ideas, and overall their creative expression. So what do employers say about Gen Z and millennials? So let's talk about the pros and then we'll talk about the cons. So both generations are less committed to the organization and company and more obsessed with growth and self-actualization. So if you notice, within the baby boomers were loyal towards the company. So they would work in a company and an organization for over 30 years. Millennials and Gen Z, we're not doing that. We want more, we want more so growth. We want more so awareness, not just of, self-actualization, but growth within our work environment. So we do want that. And employers do say that's a pro. They also say that that both generations are technology savvy, which is true because both generations technically grew up in the technology age. Both generations bring in new and creative ideas to their teams, which is also true, very creative. Both generations want an all-inclusive and diverse team. So that is something that you'll definitely see within the trend of the Gen Zs and millennials down the road that want more people that have different walks of life, different personalities, different perspectives, more progressive type ordeals. Gen Z are more bold and vocal about their wants, and millennials are more eager to learn and given tasks that help elevate their creative expression. So employers definitely agree that if they give millennials and Gen Z, just tasks that help them with their creative expression and so forth, they typically do well in it. But let's look at some cons. So a lot of employers basically have stated that both generations exhibit lazy and unmotivated tendencies. They say that we are obsessed to social media and their smartphones. How dare they? Okay, with my smartphone right here on my desk. Both generations can be impractical and unrealistic. And various corporations have expressed that both generations are challenging to work with. And I will just go ahead and say that with every generation, there are different shaping events. Baby boomers were shaped by World War II. So there are just different mindsets and different things. And I'm not going to go off on a tangent and a rant and say we are all products of our environment, but we do have to understand and empathize towards the shaping events that have occurred within our generation that contribute to our perspective. And our employers are our baby boomers and our Generation X's. And some silent. All right. So what do higher education professionals say about Gen Z and millennials? So here are some pros. Millennials are more prone to problem solving and they express creativity easily. So, when given something, especially of what they are passionate about, creativity is through the roof, like work ethic through the roof. Both generations value active learning activities. So instead of telling a Gen Z or millennial, hey, this is what I want you to do, come on, let's look at some activities. Let's look at some hands-on things. That's something that both generations tend to, gravitate more towards. Both generations are technology driven, cannot lie. Of course, even with types of communication, if it can be a text, that would be definitely preferred. When both generations are passionate and attentive to a topic or subject, again, they typically do well in it. So if a Gen Zer is really good at math and science, that's something that they're just going to excel in because that's what they're passionate about. And I know some people say that's a no-brainer, and you do have, and I'm not saying that Gen Zers and millennials don't produce well-rounded students, but I'm saying that when it comes to specific subjects, typically higher education professionals have basically expressed that they just do better in them if they're passionate about it and if they like it. So what the cons of what they say about Gen Z and millennials? They don't say millennials lack creativity in the higher education realm, but they say that Gen Z do. They do say that Gen Zers lack creativity. Educators have also expressed that Gen Z also lack adaptability skills. So Mr. Pelt made a comment and I wrote it down, geared towards the traditional setting, right? So we can view in the higher education space the traditional setting, the classroom setting, and so forth. Gen Zers prefer, especially with the pandemic, we, of course, utilizing Canvas, emails, all of that stuff. Gen Zers prefer that. So when you're telling them, yeah, you need to take this English 101 or this, COM 101 class in the classroom, what? I don't want to be there. I don't want to do that. So that definitely is a thing. Both generations struggle with soft skills. That has been a thing, social skills and soft skills. Both generations have somewhat weaponized mental health. A lot of higher education professionals within those older generations, although mental health is normalized now, and we definitely are jumping on the bandwagon, and everybody has mixed views about mental health, but a lot of the older generations are basically saying that, okay, everything is an issue, or okay, they have an issue with everything, or this affects them. And those are just two different worlds. We know that baby boomers came from a time where you didn't talk about your feelings. Gen X, sometimes it just depends because of those shaping events. So another con is if millennials do not see the value in a topic or subject, they will not perform their best. And some educators also argue that both generations are out of touch. So, they feel as if social media technology has played a vital role and they're not really realistic or really in the now. All right, so we all know what employers and educators are doing. Employers are trying to figure out how to retain millennials, Gen Z. They're working on marketing tactics. They're working on benefits. They're working on how their communication skills. And then educators, of course, are doing the same thing with every conference. How do you incorporate this to make your lesson plan great? What do you do with your curriculum to attract and retain your students? So we all know this, but what can we do? What can millennials and Generation Z do to increase our value in both settings? Let's talk about it. So, how can both generations amplify their value in higher education? So, the first one is being attentive. And I totally get it. I mean, perhaps not breaking out our iPhone, when we're in the midst of a conversation with a teacher, perhaps maybe, keeping eye contact, engaging, asking questions, that kind of thing, understanding the different generation of educators you will have. Okay, Generation X, baby boomers, you got some silent. I mean, seriously, like understanding the generations, understanding shaping events. And I know we can't necessarily hone down on stereotypes, but we can understand certain events that have shaped generations to come. I mean, we're all shaped differently. Now, granted, we do have similarities because baby boomers are like, oh, well, Gen Zs, but Gen Zs are also like you both when it comes to conservatism of money and when it comes to being realistic. So there are just, there are differences, but there are similarities, and being open and acceptive of change. So basically what I am saying is, although technology is playing a major role in higher education, we still have to be open to possibly the traditional classroom setting, maybe using a hard copy book instead of a digital one, perhaps, networking in person. I just attended a summit here in Baldwin County, and I'm a natural extrovert anyway, but it was so great because I was with people and I was talking to people and I was engaged with people and networking. So we really can't forget that old school mentality when it comes to being open and acceptive of change. And the same rules apply within higher education. Find a mentor. Now, of course, we know, we can agree to disagree with older generations. However, we cannot not gain wisdom from them. Some of the wisest people in my life don't have a college degree. My grandmother, my grandfather, love them, but they have given me so much that I didn't learn in the classroom setting or in a workplace. But with educators, it's just so different. And then, of course, just understanding them. Gen X, shaped by the civil rights movement. Of course, like I stated earlier, education was different. They look at that differently. So you have to be understanding of that to a certain degree. So being a little bit more empathetic. And of course, gaining that different perspective. It's clear that both generations are innovators, Gen Zs, millennials, we are, but let's be teachable and let's prove to these educators that yes, you can teach a new dog old tricks. Like what I did there? All right. That was pretty good. I thought it was so clever. So
Martin's
literally
taking
just thought of that off the top. Oh, so good. So let's discuss amplifying value in the work environment for Gen Zs and millennials. So understanding, again, the generation you work with, okay? That's a no-brainer, understanding that. Again, generations are shaped by different events. Be patient and understanding. You might have to help that boomer access their Gmail account. You might have to help that Gen X reset their Facebook password. Or, you might need to help them figure out a formula for Excel spreadsheet, or how to put a border around your Word doc, or how to use Canva. You might have to do that, but being patient and understanding literally will take you a long way. Finding compromises within your work environment. So we all love our jobs, but there is always going to be something you just don't like about your job, or you're just not feeling, within your job at that time. So, and that's normal. However, find understanding in the tasks. And just to clarify, I'm not telling you to stay somewhere that, does not value you, or, it's just destroying you mentally. However, when you feel there's something going on with the task, or you feel there's a lack of, instead of leaving, because research has shown we leave, speak up, talk to HR, talk to your supervisor. If you've done everything you can, then you leave. But try to use those social skills that I know we all have. Again, finding a mentor. I cannot stress that enough. Hang on to that Generation X. Find some time to talk to a boomer. I mean, just instead of kind of like, oh, they're just so old school. Think about it, just think about talking to them. Think about gaining that new perspective. You can really learn a lot. Definitely so. And make friends with people of different walks of life, which the fifth one really won't be that much of an issue with Generation Z and millennials, because we value the diversity and we value the inclusiveness of the work environment. We want that, but we can't forget about age. We can't forget about the older people that have, definitely laid down the foundation within that company. So I think having a conversation with them and possibly having them in your circle, your work circle at least, will benefit you entirely. So at this time, I'm going to open the floor for questions, but I do want to discuss, these are my sources and here's my contact information. So if you want some of these sources that I've used for my presentation, or if you have any questions, or if you want to follow up with me via email, that's my information. I do go by the pronouns she, her, and hers. And again, it was a pleasure to just talk to you all about the generations. I'm so passionate about it. So passionate. So, oh, in Alabama 1, before I forget, thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. I forgot to say that within the beginning of my presentation.
Well, Jasmine, thank you very much. You did an excellent job. Lots of great information. I know I have a couple of questions, but if everybody else would put their questions in the chat, we appreciate it. And of course, my questions are going to be more from the Gen X standpoint to you. So some advice. A couple of things you said that really stood out to me. One thing you talked about was that Gen Z is looking for a great boss. Well, what does a great boss mean?
You know, a great boss that's going to listen, understand, flexibility, stability, that kind of thing. So kind of like what Mr. Pelt was saying, like listening to them, maybe not judging them off the rip. Like maybe if you don't understand a certain idea, saying, okay, can you explain that further? Like get in their minds, because there is a different mindset.
Okay, no doubt. Thank you. And kind of a follow-up question to that. We, as I'm sure a lot of the business leaders that are on this call have, we have a challenge with managing those expectations of those Gen Zers as far as promotional opportunities. So again, what advice can you give us other than obviously making them as available as possible, but in a realistic standpoint, in an organization our size, there's only so many promotional opportunities. What's some advice to kind of manage those expectations a little bit?
Honestly, I also would give them a chance to lead some projects. Give them a chance to lead some sessions too. You'll be shocked. I know that a lot of times, because I think the oldest, well, technically the oldest Gen Z is 26. And I get we're scared to give younger people the floor to do things. I totally get it sometimes, but I mean, you know, I feel as if they can handle it. I'm pretty sure you know of some Gen Zs or millennials off the top of your heads that will be able to manage, orchestrate, like lead a session or lead something or project or something. Give them a little bit more creativity when it comes to things like that.
No, thank you. That's great advice. And
And just really quick, not trying to cut you off, I also would have a meeting, like have an open session with what are some ideas that you all think geared towards maybe this? And okay, what do you think? Ask them, well, how would you orchestrate it? Okay, would you prefer to lead it? What do you think if you spearheaded that? They jump on it.
No, that's great. And I'll brag on our team here with Martin and Jackie and our CEO, Bill Wells. This actual talk today is being led by the Alabama 1 ambassadors, which is a group of young leaders in our organization that we put together to try to give them some of that opportunity. So thank you for that. And then thank you to our team for having the vision.
And can I brag on Marissa, because we actually went to choir camp together, and then we attended choir together. And she asked me, and I was like, thank you so much. So you definitely, Marissa is amazing. So I know you have some really great leaders on your team.
Well, thank you very much. She's in the corner. You can't see her, but she's blushing right now.
And the reason that chat is going so well is because of Marissa. Yeah, that she is leading that. Did we have any questions, Marissa, in the chat?
Oh, okay. Well,
Awesome.
Yes,
Yeah.
awesome job, Jasmine. Thank you very much. You're getting a standing ovation from the group. And if you can, also please stick around in case we have questions at the end. Our next speaker is Mr. Andy Phillips. He is a Tuscaloosa native and local business owner of the Overflow Car Wash. If anybody's in Northport, go check him out. Andy was a University of Alabama baseball player, and Andy, I did not know that you held the SEC record for a 36-game hitting streak. So that's pretty awesome. Andy is involved in several leadership roles, particularly in the church, Fellowship of Christian Athletes. I know personally he leads the small group for my church, and both of my boys have benefited from his presence. So Andy, again, thank you for just who you are. He has participated in practically all of our Bridge Builders events, and he's a longtime contributor. We're very, very blessed to have him. So Andy, again, thank you for joining us again, and we look forward to hearing about winning with Gen Zers.
Yeah, thank you guys. Yes, this is a privilege for me to be with you guys again. I really appreciate the fact, and I'll tell you, as much as as much as I enjoy being a part, I feel like I learn so much every time I'm here. As a matter of fact, I'll tell you, day before yesterday, I actually am coaching a little group of baseball players down in Demopolis for a little tournament that we're getting ready for. And I actually used about a 10-minute video from Tim Alexander to talk about just mindset with those kids, and obviously got to meet Tim on the panel here with you guys, and just he alone, getting to know him and being inspired by him has really has changed my life. So it was kind of neat to kind of bring that full circle, knowing that a couple of days later I'll be back on this panel speaking again. So it's a privilege to be here. I wanted to take just a little bit, kind of being in the sports world and now being in the business world, to talk a little bit about just the idea of winning with Gen Zers, and being in something that your whole life it's kind of surrounded around that idea of winning and what that looks like. We have a lot of times, especially now, there's this question circulated a lot, whether it's in sports or in church life or in business life or whatever else, where the question is asked a lot of times is, what's the win? When you're getting ready to endeavor into something, you're always looking for what is the win. And so when I think about that, just in this setting, and think about the past few years, I found myself, I was sharing this with Martin the other day. I found myself, when I was coaching at Alabama, kind of frustrated at times when I felt like I was kind of leading the charge a little bit on investing time and creating this opportunity to say, whatever I can do to help you, whether it's decision making, whether it's in relationships, whether it's just trying to find purpose, any of those things, trying to make yourself kind of an open door. And honestly, to feel like nobody really stepped through that door. It was frustrating because I'm going, what am I not doing to get people to make yourself, to take you up on your offer, so to speak, to be that mentor. For so long, it felt like nobody would kind of step through that door. And I was sharing with Martin, it's ironic how, as I've transitioned from sports kind of into the business world, those things have shifted quite drastically. And it's really been, more than anything, an encouragement for me to have really a lot of young Gen Zers who literally are starting to ask all the right questions, that are motivated by, advancing in success. And so to simplify it, what is the win when it comes to winning with Gen Zers? And I think it really boils down, and I'm just, as a point of emphasis, want to say this today. It's literally seeing people with value, adding value to them, and then creating value for them. And it's all surrounded around that idea of value. And, when I think about how, just the idea of how to value people, I can't step any further than being a man of faith, is looking at the life of Jesus and everything that he did. It was all about valuing people. I mean, if we could literally have conversations with people in the Bible, and say, Nicodemus, did you feel valued? He would say yes. The woman at the well, did you feel valued? The children throughout the Bible, did you feel valued? And there's one thing, no matter if we're talking about millennials, if we're talking about Gen Zers, if we're talking about baby boomers, Gen Xers, there's one thing that I think we all have in common, and that's the need to feel valued. And I think the win is, whether we're leading or whether we are being led, to know that you're valued is the win. And so that's what I want to talk about really quickly today in my experiences and how to value. And it's simply this: it's really connecting with people. And it's seeing people not necessarily as they are, but as they could be. I think about in my own life, how many times am I where I am today, not because people saw the mistakes or where I was today, but they saw the potential where I could be. So they kept believing and they kept pouring and they kept creating opportunities for me to advance. And so it's really about connecting with people and seeing people as they are. How do we add value? And I think it's simply stated, time. I think Jasmine said it so well, in this digital age that Gen Zers live in, it's that being used to instant information, instant feedback,